Welcome to the Binge Breakers podcast. I'm Jacqueline. I am here to teach you how I overcame bulimia and my binge eating disorder, and how you can too. Through simple steps of mind management, repairing your relationship with yourself, understanding your habits, and intuitive eating.
Disclaimer: this recording is not intended to be utilized as medical advice or a medical diagnosis. If you think you're in need of medical attention or treatment, please seek it immediately. This recording will also contain sensitive subjects such as binging and purging, weight, and depression. Please listen at your own discretion and do what you think is best for you.
Hello, everyone listening. I have a special guest here that I'm really excited to introduce you to. This is Dr. Bunmi, and she is a food addiction coach. She's also well known for her book. She's an author of, I think it's a new book, fairly new, but Craving Freedom, the R4 Method for Overcoming Food Addiction. And it's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. I saw that and I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Thank you.
And I first discovered Dr. Bunmi when she was on Kate Moyer-Seth, hopefully I'm pronouncing her name correctly, her podcast, ADHD Women's Wellbeing Podcast. So thank you for joining me today. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, my lovely. So Dr. Bunmi, you can call me Bunmi, and I am a food addiction coach. And I have been since 2017, and it's an absolute passion of mine because of my own journey. So I'm just really passionate to kind of impart information where I can, help where I can, and support where I can.
You have a ton of resources out there too. I was for those listening, I was combing through your website before this interview, and you have training for people that are wanting to actually help people with food addiction, that sort of stuff, but lots of different and very accredited. I was just blown away by that. So amazing job.
Thank you.
Do you have a podcast? I didn't see that.
I don't have a podcast. That's something that I'm going to develop for next year. when I get the time.
At first I was going to say you should start a podcast. And I was like, you know what, Jacqueline, not everyone is meant to do a podcast. So, because clearly you're an author and all those things. So whatever content works best for you. But I feel like based on our little conversation, you might be really good at podcasting too.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think I will definitely kind of take the mantle next year. Definitely. It'd be so cool.
Well, tell me, so we were already talking about it a little bit, but your journey started from a very young age. What kind of struggles brought you into this line of work?
My struggles basically, I think from a very young age, I had kind of a very odd relationship with food. I was what we call a latchkey kid. My parents went to work full time. I let myself in at the house out. So I went to school on my own with my friends. I'd come home. My mother, always before they got home from work, she always left a snack for me, like some soup in a flask and a sandwich, and just to keep me going until they came home, and then she could cook dinner. Now, I was an only child for like the first 12 years of my life. So I kind of had, came home, let myself in, do homework, watch some television, TV, and have my snack. But then we had this lovely, great big pantry full of different things and food. And it was like the Aladdin's cave. And I would kind of have a little sneak in and find that extra chocolate bar, or I would start to kind of delve into things that I suppose a lot of people think a bit strange. Like I'd open the Ovaltine and get 2 or 3 teaspoonfuls of, Ovaltine and eat it raw, or Horlicks, or...
Oh my God, I'm getting flashbacks. I used to, I would do that with like hot chocolate, oddly enough, like just the powder. And I didn't remember that till just now. So flashbacks.
Or like, sort of Jello, you call it Jello, we call it jelly. And, open the packet and have 2 or 3 cubes, hoping my mum would never find out that I've eaten the Jello. It was just bizarre. And I would just help myself to these little, a bit here, bit there, hoping, mum wouldn't notice. But it was like my comfort. It was like I was on my own, done all my homework. It was like my little reward, really. And I loved it. That's what I did. That was my kind of peculiar start. Then going into kind of my teens, it was more of I've got to do well at school. There was a lot of pressure from my family. My dad in particular had to get grade A's, nothing less than grade A's. We come from a kind of an ethnic group. I'm Nigerian. We came to the country, England, and it was always do well, do education, education, education. So there was an awful lot of pressure on me to do very well. And a lot of that, I think, a lot of my anxiety manifest with kind of eating. So eating was more and more of my comfort. But I was finding that I was eating an awful lot and finding biscuits, and I'd get a packet of biscuits and eat all the biscuits. I don't know if you call them cookies, don't you? Cookies.
Yeah, biscuits, cookies.
Biscuits, cookies, and I'd put margarine on it or butter, and I'd put jam on again, peculiar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd just eat like half a packet or a packet, and I'd just eat it like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would start to make myself, I thought I didn't feel right, even though I was slim. I just wanted to make myself sick. And it wasn't because of my body shape or anything like that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a purge. It was like just to get rid of my anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
That I'd eaten all this stuff. And then once it was a ritual, and I just throw it up and then I felt better.
Interesting. Because there's a lot of people, they start because they're upset with their body size or shape, but yours, it was just kind of discomfort from the food. And then it started becoming this whole thing.
Yeah, and just to make me feel better. To me, it was, when I look back on it, it felt like a self-punishment.
Mm-hmm.
You could have done better, or why didn't you get that particular grade? There was just an awful lot of self-punishment, self-loathing. This is when I'm not good enough started, and it was compounded by the fact that we were moved to an area in Leeds in Yorkshire, away from kind of our ethnic community to an all-white community, so I could go to a better school. So
okay.
I was kind of the only black child there, the only black girl there. So again, I was very conscious of that.
Your phone is like, answer me. But
can you hear it now?
Yeah, no. But that must have been very fun being the only black person at all-white school with all the pressure your dad already put on you.
I know. So there was a lot of teasing and names called, and again, the self-loathing got worse. I'm not good enough. So it kind of all kicked off then. The eating kicked off, the binging, and then the being sick, and that was me for quite a while, to the point where my throat was hurting. I was vomiting blood. I didn't tell anybody. I was a bit scared of that. But again, I just kept it all very quiet because I thought nobody else probably does this. This is just, weird, and I'm a bit ashamed, and I don't want to tell anybody, so I'll just try and stop. So I did manage to stop, but funny enough, it was what I call cross addiction, which was then I started to exercise like a demon. Exercise, athletics. I was very good at athletic, but that just became all encompassing. Again, a big preoccupation. Again, to feel good, driving myself, working extra hard at school. So that addiction just transmuted into, overstudying, over exercising. So in a way, I didn't have to deal with, it was almost like not having to deal with me.
Yeah,
my
you
feelings.
Can just lose yourself and
I could just
working
lose
as hard
myself.
as possible.
Yeah, just lose myself, just work hard, play hard. That's it. Then going into university, and again, addiction is very interesting. So any listeners out there that you might be able to find a kind of commonality, that you go from one thing to another. The next thing that I went into was drink. University was about alcohol. So that was my addiction for the next 20, 30 years.
Wow.
It was drinking. So the food again took a bit of a back seat. It was drinking. Literally 7 rehabs in 7 years towards the end of it.
Oh my goodness.
An awful lot of consequences. My annus horribilis was 2008, and that was my last drink. And coming out of rehab, I just basically said, I'm never, ever, whatever I need to do, I will not go back there again. I will not drink again. What was interesting was it was the food.
Came back.
That came back. And it came back in a vengeance. I wasn't drinking, right? So that's fine. I'm not drinking. That's okay. But it was trying to do the same thing again. It was the way I felt about myself. And, it's trying to replace, certain feelings was food again. And I quickly realized, I think within that first 2 to 3 months, the binge eating, and it was horrific. It was horrific. It was tubs of ice cream. It was out of control. And I started to feel I'm feeling exactly the same way as when I drank. The compulsion, that mental obsession, I'm not going to do it again, swearing off, but still doing it again within that day. Just preoccupied, just thinking about it all the time. When am I going to get my fix? When am I going to have my food? And this was something that went on for a little bit of time. Then I realised that this is addiction. This is addiction. This is like how I felt with alcohol. I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't sober. I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't focusing. I was tired, fatigued, irritable, mood swings. All the same things were happening. And I thought, right, okay, I need to get some help, but also, going back to AA for, the 12 step, but also look into why I also kept doing it, what was within me that, wasn't being nourished. It's been nourished with alcohol, been nourished with food, with work. What was it that was missing? And this is when I talk about the hole in the soul. This is when I talk about.
I'm very interested now.
Yeah,
I was interested before,
missing,
but now I'm like, what's going on?
Something was missing within me, and I felt very, very much not alone, but I felt that this is something that I have to be responsible for, and by any means necessary to try and find it. So I looked a lot into addiction and the neuroscience of it. I have really studied it and thought, that's it. This is the addiction cycle. Wow. The mental obsession.
Can I ask you really quickly, because I was curious about this too. I've learned some about food addiction. I read books on it and stuff like that, but there's a lot of people, especially in the eating disorder community, they don't like that term, and they're kind of like, it's not food, like you can't be addicted to food. So how do you define food addiction, and like how did you come to that, I don't know, conclusion?
I think it's the way, it's the addictive behavior. And it was very similar to how I drank, that I just had to have it. But there were certain foods. It wasn't all foods. It was certain foods, and it was certain preferred foods or special foods that were high in fat, sugars, and salts. It was your ice cream, your chocolate. I wasn't addicted to apples, or some people are. But primarily I was addicted to things that were high in fat, sugar and salt, sweets, sugars, ultra processed, all of that. And it was where's that loss of control. There was a loss of control that I couldn't stop when I started. Even though I was full, I couldn't stop. And this is where addiction is, that you lose that control, that tolerance level. It doesn't matter. You'll just continue eating. And that's how I equated it to addiction. That was but even before I even knew the term, I just knew I was addicted to certain foods. Some people don't like addiction, and that's fair enough. I understand that as well. Some people do shy away from it. But addiction is just a pathway. It's a neural pathway that's set up. You become hardwired. So it's only in a cycle that's set up. But a lot of people, I do understand, may think, oh, it's not addiction. They might call it a predilection or preferred, or they're I can't think of any other terms for.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Where it's out of control and it's severe, and I kind of stand strong calling it addiction, because it is that powerful. That you become powerless over it. And so for me, it feels comfortable calling it addiction, but I understand if people don't like that word.
The reason I asked you is just because I tend to use the word addiction a lot and draw comparisons when I'm talking about For mine, it was a compulsion, like the binge eating. It was definitely felt like an addiction, even though it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't these common substances you see. And while I use some methods in my own recovery process with other people that wouldn't be probably what you'd use for addiction recovery, I felt like the behaviors themselves were addictive, like the pathways, the dopamine hit, like the craving. So I relate a lot, and I don't always use the word, but I don't think we should shy away from it because seeing that way can be really helpful. And
I think
yeah.
so. I think so. And more people are recognizing the term as, this is something that's here to stay. And I think addiction in general has gone up. Whether it's alcohol, food, gambling, sex, porn, you name it, it's shot up, especially since COVID, that we are living in addictive society.
Absolutely.
You know,
And I don't know why people, and this is getting off topic, so I'll go back to like how you recovered and stuff like that. But
I think people don't like the word because it's associated with you know, kind of people shooting up with, needles maybe, or I don't know what it is, but addiction is a scientific, term. It's a pathway, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Addiction's the opposite of connection. When we're not connected with ourselves, when we're not connected with other people, that's when addiction becomes rife. So, addiction is opposite of connection. That's how I see it. And it is a hard to discuss topic with many people, and I do understand that, but we can't shy away from it anymore. It's like the elephant in the room now. It's there.
Well, and a lot of people, like, even if, let's say, we discover it's not an addiction at all, which I feel like it probably is in some ways, it doesn't help that because people feel that way, right? So you have to kind of reach those people and talk about it. But tell me, like, if you feel like you're actually in food addiction, you are an addict, how do you go about even solving that? How did you go about solving that?
I went about it in several ways, and it was a journey of exploration for me. And in the early days, there was not really anything called food addiction, but I knew I had to start tapping into what are my needs, what is not being met. That was number one thing. Why am I doing what I'm doing? And it was about that hole in the soul. It was about the ultimately successful, doing really well in life. Everything was going really well when I got into recovery, but it was that old self-loathing was still there from when I was little. The self-loathing, self-esteem, never that. Even though I feel very confident, my self-esteem was low. So I had to start working on that self-love and that self-care. And I know for some people that might sound like a cliche, but that was really what started the healing process, was giving myself permission to be vulnerable to people who could help me. Because there was always this, like, you've got to be a powerful Black woman, and you can't show any emotions. And I did a lot of that for many, many years. And I had to really let go and find the people I could trust, I could talk to, and also start building up my self-esteem in many ways with therapy and doing sort of self-work and doing a lot of reading as well, but reaching out and getting the help that I needed. And taking it a step at a time, just taking it step by step by step. That Rome wasn't built in a day, but I know that my big why was, had such a big why, such a big compelling why to, heal myself from, food addiction, binge eating, whatever you want to call it, and addiction in general. Because I know that if I'd stopped the food, it would be back to the alcohol or back to the work or back to whatever. Yeah. It was back to one thing or another, and I was sick to death of bouncing around. I just wanted to live a life that was peaceful, that I was kind to myself, that I could kind of get on in life, because a lot of the time this stopped me doing from so much. The things I really wanted to do. And it's a very much, 2 steps forward, 1 step back when, you're in the addiction or, in the binge eating, in that behavior. And there's so much I wanted to achieve that, I just was just stopping me. This was stopping me. So not really living my best life.
Yeah.
The life that I truly deserved. And
with like self-care and treating yourself better. I know you said that first and like filling your needs. And it does sound cliche, but that was like about 6 months before I binged for the last time is when I started treating myself differently, started being nicer to myself, started addressing what's really bothering me. Even though the addiction or binge eating, bulimia was still there, it lessened in frequency just because I wasn't being so horrible to myself all the time.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And that was very, very important to me. And the little exercises that I did, for instance, I mean, I was also got into the holistic side, the alternative therapies. So I became a Reiki, practiced Reiki, became a Reiki master. I loved Reiki. So even level 1 Reiki, which is kind of it's real self-care. It's like, palm healing, hand healing positions in your body, because it's in your body as well. It's trauma, it's, that's in your body. And just to be able to, use something like Reiki on myself, which I now use with other people, has really, really helped. But crystals, and I first came into the alternative therapies because I was advised when I came out of rehab and I was starting to binge, my doctor said to me, I think the best thing for you to do is go on antidepressants. And I went, no chance, because if I go on antidepressants, I'm addicted. I know that for a fact. I'm not going to go off them, and I just needed a way to feel better without drugs or drink or food. And a friend of mine, we were just chatting about it, said, look, my doctor's told me to go on Prozac. I don't really want to go on it. I know I'm going to stay on it if I do go on it. I don't want that. And she suggested, she's a very good friend of mine today, Anna. I should go and see Anna. She's a shaman. Now, I never knew what a shaman was. What's a shaman? Okay, let's go and see her. So I booked in a session with Anna, and she used crystals on me and other things. And I would say probably the first 2 or 3 sessions, it was like, oh, what's going on? And then all of a sudden, I just felt amazing. I felt like something was looking after me, that it was going to be okay, that life's going to be all right if I, followed my recovery. But this is support, whatever it was that's unseen is supporting me. This feels really, really good. So I went back to Anna and I just said, look, I want to know more about crystals. Would you do a little workshop with me? I knew they were working because I'm one of the biggest cynics when it comes to what I thought wasn't scientific. But something was working and I didn't know what it was. And so we talked about crystals and the basic, and we did a workshop. And ever since then, I've worked with crystals. I love them. They give you a vibration of joy. Just in simplistic explanation, I think crystals are here to work with us, to balance us, to ground us, to raise our vibration. And I've been an absolute devotee since then. So it was the crystals that I got fascinated by, Reiki, all about grounding and peace, self-love, and then all the other holistic things that I've done, which I just think have really turned my recovery into a just really upgraded life. It's not about recovery. And I just used to say to myself, if it's all just about just not stopping eating or drinking, then that wouldn't be enough. I had to live a life of joy, live a life where I feel uplifted, joyful, fulfilled, that I can start fulfilling what I want to fulfill in my life. And all these holistic alternative therapies really, really helped me and do today.
Well, so, even like with crystals, I'll be honest, like I'm a skeptic when it comes to crystals for sure. But I find that when you are searching to heal yourself, going for any and all methods, and if you find them to be effective, again, like let's say like in the future we find crystals aren't effective or something like that, but if it's helping you, and it feels like you really enjoy it and you like it and you're finding effects from it, then what's the harm, right? And I was listening to this story the other day of someone who they went through traumatic accident. They were, the doctor said they're basically going to be paralyzed, and they just sought out every single method under the sun. And that optimism and drive and continually taking action towards it really healed them. So, and I would agree also, outside of all that, it's not just about recovery. I use the term recovery a lot, and you want to recover, but what I mean by that is that you want to live a full life, right? Like
That's right.
Live a life beyond recovery.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And that's what I wanted to strive towards was these wonderful things that I want to do in my life. But, all this is stopping me, my binge eating, my behaviors, that are all stopping me from, really feeling, fulfilled in life and being able to help other people as well. I wasn't in a position to do that. And so long as whatever you find, when you're searching for kind of alternatives, that it doesn't become an obsession,
right?
Doesn't become an obsession, like exercise. People exercise and they over exercise. And I think it's just, again, knowing yourself, tuning into you, becoming more self-aware, creating boundaries is very important to me. And again, through my journey, I was very much the people pleaser. So my boundaries were literally, there wasn't any boundaries. So it was, yes, I'll do that. I'll do this. Yeah, no, there was never a no, because I wanted people to like me because I didn't like myself. And again, creating those boundaries over the years and saying no to things when, I want to say no to them, and standing in that power, standing in my power, attaining my, sovereignty.
Yeah. Well, with all of these things that you changed in your life, did the addiction just kind of melt away, or did you have to do any behavioral things or change anything about the way you were eating? Was there anything there?
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's, I mean, that's, there was two things going on. It's your program, whatever program it was that you wish to be on, what suits you, what resonates with you. And I think that's important, what suits you and resonates with you, whatever program. There's so many programs out there now. And I was a program that, suited me. Then I brought all these other things in. So with the eating, there was a program about food planning. That was very, very important, creating the daily routine and daily rituals. So I gave myself space to recover.
Yeah, I mean,
it's important to give yourself space to recover, because half the time I was chaotic and there was no daily routine. I was a big multitasker and prided myself on it, but I was like the swan with a little, looking elegant, and then below the water, there's these legs kind of kicking frantically to kind of look. That was me. So, and I wanted to stop that because it was tiring. So, getting a really good daily structure, because that's where the brain starts to go from sympathetic, fright and flight, to parasympathetic. So you're starting to invite that rest and digest part of your brain to kick in, where you can do your daily routines and that you love your little daily rituals like your Reiki, your meditation, breath work, yoga, that kind of thing. All those little complementary things that are going to just really aid and motivate you to carry on, your program. That is so important. So those had to kick in. Then looking at the trigger foods and looking at the foods that I would go to, and looking at the emotions around them, and then seeing what I could do instead. When that comes up, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, what's your support circle? What can you do? Making sure that I'm eating regularly, breakfast, lunch, dinner. That was important, removing those trigger foods, those preferred foods or special foods, so that my brain was nourished. I wasn't left hungry, because a lot of the time with yo-yo dieting, it's about starvation, is it deprivation? So our brains and our bodies are talking about starvation, feast, famine, and it's a bit strange to us sometimes to just feel normal.
Fine. It feels weird.
And it feels weird. And a lot of people, a lot of my clients find it really, really too alien sometimes. Like, oh, I don't like this because I feel, all right. There's no hunger. There's no big fullness. It's just, we're just right. Nice.
Well,
Eventually
and
they're like,
sometimes
okay.
the feeling overly full or the feeling crazy hungry is that distraction, right? It's something that you kind of get addicted to in itself.
Absolutely. You've got, yeah, nail on the head there.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So it's like, looking at the emotions around it. So there's an awful lot of unpacking and repacking
Mm-hmm.
certain things.
Well,
And,
did you find
recovery
the
is,
emotions to be a big, because when you say food addiction for people, sometimes they're like you just need to remove certain trigger foods, but for you it's definitely like dealing with the emotions surrounding that food, having a support circle, having other things are helping you
yeah,
actually have space. But then also you did have to remove some trigger foods.
yeah. I mean,
Mhm.
put it this way, it's like, it's a journey and it's okay. Some people might say, oh, I can't have that, chocolate or anything. There's no way I'm going to give up that chocolate. They go,
Mhm.
okay, that's fine. And this is what I used to do. I'm not giving it up. I'll just have a bit at a time. But within not even 2 days, 3 days, I'll be back eating. So it was a journey of exploration. It's like, okay, you try that then, see how that works out for you.
Mhm.
And then you just realize that you've got the I call it the flavor. You've got that phenomenon of craving where you physiologically the tissue hunger experienced by that particular food is you're just ravenous again.
Mhm.
So it's a question of what do I really want?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you
Does it
find,
mean if I
go ahead.
sorry, does it mean if I, if I remove this, what beautiful, delicious, real food can I have that's going to
Mhm.
help? So it wasn't a case of I can't have that, but it's what else can I have that's nice and is not going to trigger me. I've got to a point now in my recovery that I can walk down the aisles, shopping aisles, supermarket aisles. There's certain foods I know I can't eat because it will just trigger off, but I don't trigger. I don't feel like that's a trigger food now. It's just I'm placed in what I call a position of neutrality.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, it's there. I don't need it. It doesn't enhance my life. I feel all right. I don't feel like this tug of, oh, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I? It's like, hey, don't need it. And it's
Mhm.
nice. It's the same with alcohol and it's the same with food, that it's a really nice feeling to feel free of that
Yeah.
tug, push pull.
Yeah, there's an idea of abundance with that too, of instead of just focusing, like they say, you should not focus on what you can't have, but what you can have instead,
Yeah,
and go around there.
absolutely.
The thing I'm thinking in the back of my mind too, is because like for me, I'm not sure if it was full food addiction because I can have like ice cream and cakes and it's not
Hmm.
about like I'll have it and I don't binge on it.
Hmm.
But for some people, I do believe that is the case that I'm not sure how many people this affects and who all it should be prescribed different things, but some people may never be able to kind of return to certain foods again. So is that the same for you? Like some foods you just will never go back to because of the food addiction?
There's certain foods that I won't go back to. It's just a choice, really, you know.
Hmm.
And I always remember. I think it's always also having that awareness of where did it take you to.
Hmm.
But it's like with me and alcohol that how many times did I try and relapse and try and relapse and try and relapse until it was like I've got the message,
Hmm.
I can't. But I didn't feel shortchanged because I had all the other things in place,
Yeah.
which just so it just didn't matter.
Mhm.
And at the end of the day, it's what matters to you. Do you want to go through a life of yo-yo dieting or backwards and forwards and I've done it again? That soul destroying feeling that I've done it again. I've lost control. Um, it's when do you get sick and tired of being sick and tired?
Yeah.
And
It's
then when does it becomes a choice, and then it becomes such a choice that you just choose life. You choose to feel good. You
mhm.
choose not to, I don't want to wake up with a carb hangover. or this monumentally awful brain fog,
Mm.
or snapping at my kids, or just not wanting to go out because I'd rather eat. And so I'm missing all these lovely events with my family. So that's what dawned on me at the end of it was, what is my big why? Why do I want to achieve all these things?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to do it and suffer. I don't want to struggle. That's why, slowly inviting lovely alternative foods, real foods that nourish me, that made me feel healthy, that made me feel good, and having all those little rituals in place that replaced food, little rituals that far replace food,
Yeah.
and gives you that soul satisfaction. And what I find in rituals is what I couldn't find in food in the end. So there's lots of little pieces to the puzzle, which eventually, given the time, given the patience, path of self-awareness, curiosity, you get onto this path, which is just a lovely path and of food freedom, peace around food. But it does take some work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people listening might find a lot of freedom in your words, because I don't think everyone has to be abstinent from certain foods, because
Yeah.
it just wasn't my journey. But I think there are people like that out there, and there are not many people that speak about this because there's a lot of shame around it. I think people are like, well, that's restriction. That's, you can't keep that up. That's using willpower, that sort of stuff. But I hear what you're saying, and I think that there's a place for being abstinent in a way that is your choice. And like you said, you got the message loud and clear. And over time, it's like you don't want it, because each time you go back to it, it's the same experience over and over again. And for those people listening that have that experience, and it the kind of full abundance with having these foods and eventually it will be better doesn't match for them, I think what you're saying is going to be really comforting and freeing for them.
Yeah. But as you said, everybody's different. And I think everyone has their journey of exploration, and it's being honest with themselves.
Yeah.
At the end of is this actually really working for me? Well, yeah, I can, if you can, that's fine. But abstinence also means, abstinence of self-loathing,
Yeah. It's not just about the food.
self-hate. It's abstinence of all these things that have kept us eating. So that's how I see abstinence. Again, it's perception, isn't it? It's it's that feeling of just feeling wonderful and not feeling awful about yourself. And so it's everybody's choice. But as I said, I stand strong in the word food addiction, and food addiction, as there are papers out there now. I mean, it stands strong that food addiction, actually, the signs and symptoms of food addiction actually run right through the eating disorder spectrum. So anorexia, the signs of food addiction, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and food addiction. So it runs right through. With the binge eating disorder, there was a survey, there was an article, and there's been it's been well researched that over 60, probably 70% of people with suffering binge eating disorder have signs of food addiction.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's not very surprising. I think too, when you were speaking about it's a choice and abstinence and what you want, for me, binging, I did remove trigger foods from my house originally, when I was stopping the binging.
Yeah.
And there are times when I want to go towards behaviors. I'm much better now, and the urges are very minimal. But especially in the first years after, there were times where it's oh, binging sounds really great right now, or purging sounds really great right now. But what helped me also was kind of this idea of abstinence from those behaviors, and being there's part of me that maybe wants it, but there's part of me that understands that if I go there, it's going to be all hell breaking loose. And even though I'm technically restricting myself from this behavior, it's for the betterment of everything that I stand for and what I want to do with my life. It's not going to help me. Yeah. So exactly. I can relate to you on that as well.
Yeah, that's totally agree. But as I said, everybody has their own journey. This was my journey, and that was a journey of exploration. But I know for a fact there are certain foods that I actually choose. I don't want to eat them
Yeah.
now. I don't. There's not even a. I'm not bothered. I know what they'll do to me, but I've got to a place where there's no struggle anymore about it, and that's what I want recovery to be. It's not a struggle, you know. We need to be thriving in recovery. We need to be living this beautiful, upgraded life that we all deserve.
I think you've definitely done a good job of it too. You've really gone, and not only did you address the behaviors, the food, but then you made your life much fuller. And then I'm sure you found fulfillment in your career too, which is just
I love
phenomenal.
it. Yeah. I'm absolutely passionate about it. And I've gone a little bit further as well, because I just feel also I've become an advanced future life practitioner and past life regression, and I actually work with people in recovery or in the addiction space, where we look at the root cause. So we go back and maybe look at past life regression and look at where it started. And future life is really great because again, that just empowers your why, your big why for recovering and having a fantastic life. So we kind of get messages from your future self and bring it back into the present to embody. So this is very pioneering, and I love it. And this is beginning part of my it's part of my service now, and it's fun. It's very, very fascinating. Honestly, love it. So
yeah, for people listening, if you can't see her, she's got the biggest smile on her face. Like she definitely is excited about it. So yeah, well, I know we didn't even talk about the original reason I brought you on, but I think our conversation has taken a great direction. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
I always like to finish with asking guests 2 questions. I'll first ask, if you could give advice to anyone out there that's struggling, like just tell them one thing, what would it be?
You're not alone. You go and find some help. There's so much help out there now. There's so much help. You're not alone. Half the time we feel shame and guilt with what we're doing, and it's a lonely feeling. And just to let that person know, the listener, that there is so much help, that, people will be there with open arms and help you if you want to help yourself. So
I love that.
Don't feel like you're alone.
Yeah, that was so simple and straightforward. Like, you're not alone, go get help. And it's true. Like, the sooner you get help, the sooner you find support, the more likely it is you're going to recover.
And there's a lot of kindness out there. There's a lot of kindness and compassion, with groups and programs. So don't ever feel that you can't go.
Yeah, most people are going to welcome you in that space because they understand, they get what it's like. So you're right. And then where can people find you if they want to discover more about you?
Right, it's www.thefoodaddictioncoach.co.uk.
Yeah, that's really simple and straightforward too.
It is.
And is your Instagram the same? Is it just the food addiction coach?
The food addiction coach. Exactly the same. Yeah.
That's perfect, especially when you have the actual thing you deal with in the name.
And on Facebook as well.
Okay, yeah, awesome.
Yeah, it says what it does on the tin.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciated our talk. I thought it was interesting. And again, I think that people out there who are struggling, who aren't finding the answers they need with maybe traditional eating disorder advice or something like that will really take comfort in your words. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. Thank you. Thanks, Jacqueline.
Yeah. Bye, everyone listening.
Hey, if you found this episode helpful, check out my website at bingebreakers.com. It has free courses, awesome group coaching, and private coaching available to you right now.